AQ control axis. When I mapped and tested them, I didn't see any effect on my radar display or search zones. What are these options supposed to do? And what aircraft can use them? Hi, Mersac. These settings are responsible for moving the target queue that chooses a target on your radar screen. They work on all vehicles with radar if you disable targets cyclic switching of aircraft radar for aircraft or targets cyclic switching of ground radar for AA vehicles and vessels. Another question comes from 777GL1. What's the difference between the two rocket types from the German Wiesel 2 Ocelot AA tank? Hey there! The upgradable missile, Modification K, has a proximity fuse, which improves its battle efficiency. Skipper N10 writes, do APS systems work behind smoke? Hi, Skipper. That's a good question. Active protection systems use radar to detect threats, and no smoke ever stopped them.
And the last comment for today was written by Type 5 Hori. I'd really like to see a rocket interceptor triathlon. Can you do one? Hello, Type 5. Nice idea. Thanks, but we don't have enough participants to have a full triathlon. Let's have a small competition here instead and see who's quicker. Lining up at the start? Let's go. The Soviet vehicle breaks right off, leaving the others behind. At first, the German and the Japanese aircraft are going even, but the Comet soon overtakes its counterpart. Well, we guess the race is over.
That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to leave a like, give your crews a good pep talk before battle, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.
Last time we told you about Israeli armor that made it into the game with update Wind of Change. In this episode, let's talk about Israeli aircraft. The way to get access to them is exactly the same. You do it by unlocking any rank 4 aircraft from the British, the US, or the French tech tree, or by obtaining one of the Israeli premiums. As with ground vehicles, most aircraft employed by the Israeli Air Force were purchased from other countries, but Israeli engineers did a great job of improving and modifying those designs to make sure that they could achieve air superiority even when completely outnumbered. Today we're going to talk about the most interesting aircraft of the tech tree that are ready to challenge the best vehicles available to other nations. Let's kick it off with one of the very few piston engine aircraft of the tech tree, the Spitfire Mark 9 CW. This iconic fighter originally served in the UK, where it played a critical role in preventing the German aircraft from invading Britain. 2 20mm Hispano cannons and 2 Browning machine guns can quickly take care of any enemy aircraft, including large bombers. At rank 5, you get to the first Israeli jet, a late variant of the Votur IIN bomber. It can carry up to 3.5 tons of bombs, but that's just the beginning. The main selling point of this bomber is that it's crazy fast and also armed with 4 30mm DIFA cannons. The insane thrust-to-weight ratio of the aircraft allows it to easily outrun most of its smaller opponents and aggressively dictate the flow of battle. You also get a lot of ammo, which means that you can fire so much lead at your opponents that they won't be able to evade or withstand it. Did we mention that there's also a radar station allowing you to locate vulnerable targets with ease? Because there is one. Then we go up to rank 6, and here you simply have to take a look at the A4N. The original model was pretty great on its own, but the Israeli variant received an even more powerful engine, meaning that this model has even better flying characteristics. The plane is pretty maneuverable. It can win dogfights against many opponents at the same BR, even if they're faster than the A4N. The secret is that this strike aircraft can carry 2 AIM-9D missiles, or 4 Israeli-made Shafrir missiles. It also absolutely shines in mixed battles because of its large variety of mixed loadouts. You get the legendary AGM-65 Maverick, several smart bombs, and lots of regular bombs to pick from. At rank 6, there's also a very interesting fighter aircraft called the Sambad, which is a late version of the French Mystère. Thanks to its decent max speed and good maneuverability, the Sambad can fight really well against any of its contemporaries. And when it runs into newer, faster aircraft, it can still give them hell thanks to a good selection of air-to-air missiles and a couple of trusty 30mm cannons. This fighter also has some utility in mixed battles, as it can eliminate a few tanks with bombs and guns. But you'd better get back to taking care of enemy aircraft as soon as you can. We go to the last rank and see the one and only F-4E Phantom, an almost perfect fighter bomber. It has Sparrow missiles that are excellent for seizing initiative at medium range, and in close combat you can always rely on AIM-9P missiles. Due to its rather limited maneuverability, it has a hard time dogfighting any light fighters, but it's extremely effective at longer ranges. Furthermore, the Phantom can carry quite a lot of bombs, and it has access to many different payload options. Tankers beware! Finally, the apex predator of the whole tech tree is the Kfir C7, based on the French Dassault Mirage. Compared to the original model, it underwent a lot of changes and modifications, but you can still clearly see some of that Mirage DNA in the design. The idea was to create an effective fighter bomber, and that's why it can carry up to 4 tons of rockets, missiles, and bombs in different configurations. At first glance, its air-to-air capabilities are nowhere as impressive, as the aircraft only has access to relatively low-value, short-range air-to-air missiles. But the true strength of the Kfir C7 lies in its excellent thrust-to-weight ratio and great maneuverability, both of which can be attributed to its new engine. All of that makes this aircraft a fearsome opponent that can quickly force a dogfight, and then make short work of any enemy that dares to fight it. All in all, the Israeli Air Force employed the best aircraft from different schools of aircraft design. From the incredibly fast Spitfire to the highly versatile Phantom, each of those aircraft was a true king of the skies. But what are your favorite planes from the Israeli roster? Tell us in the comments below. Hi, welcome to Thunder Show and the best moments of the past week. How do we sum up this episode? Maybe you've gotta see it to believe it. We'll have a BMP-2, a couple of MiGs, a nuclear carrier, and even a master mortar sheller who got a plane by mistake. Let's get started. Today's first moment is another one from Reddit. Amo Racker lost their tank but got something better instead, a nuke. All they need to do is make it in time, because their team score is almost 0. The plane's taking off, while the points are getting down. Flying over a forest, 2 of the 3 points are under enemy control. Getting close to the battlefield, just a couple pixels left of the blue stripe, and gotcha. They win this round at the very last second of the battle. Now that's a true thriller. Star-Lord met a couple of BB-1s on their MiG-3 and swapped speed for altitude to get a good striking position. However, their chasers have more energy, climbing well, maybe even too well. One of them crashes and drops the chase, while the other one gets into a volley of the fighter that got its nose down already. What an amazing combo. We failed to figure out what Prosyashik tried to hit with their BMP-2M's grenade launcher, but the result is they managed to score a direct hit on an enemy Focke-Wulf from a couple kilometers away. More than that, it was chasing an ally Airacobra.
Have you ever seen such a fantastic hit with a weapon that's only good for scaring away birds? And here's a duel between two supersonic opponents. Donovan with their MiG-21 against the swift Starfighter. The F-104 is luckier here, damaging a control surface on the fish bed and sending it into a rapid spin. And then, they swiftly join the hangar screen themselves. Let's see this one more time. The MiG-21 is spinning with almost no control, but manages to knock the enemy out with a single well-placed volley. It would have been okay on piston engine planes, but these guys' total speed was almost Mach 2. Where's our gold? Bring it in. Every pilot knows that you need guided bombs for toss bombing. Trying to pull it off with conventional ones only makes sense if you're the challenge editor in the shooting range. But look at that. Mika Kuta tosses their bombs along a very curious trajectory. They even managed to fly across the battlefield before their dangerous payload made a huge arch and landed right onto an enemy Leopard 2. My oh my. Here's your gold. And as usual, our weekly award for Live War Thunder works. Today, we'd like to reward Teo Storm 1 for this amazing true-to-life camo for the German Puma IFV. Again, who said Cubism wasn't art? By the way, we see these comments saying it isn't fair to reward certain moments since it's obviously pure luck. Remember we had a poll about what you wanted to see more on Thunder Show? Your votes were around 50-50. Some of you wanted pure skills while others wanted coincidences and lucky situations. We've heard you, and now we're choosing moments from all kinds of categories. Looking forward to new ones. Bye. The Shooting Range. In this episode, Pages of History, Elephants and Ferdinands. Special, trying out the new weapon loadout menu. And Metal Beasts, the double Chinese fish bed. Many pilots have first-hand knowledge of the MiG-21 fighter family. Fewer people are familiar with their Chinese versions. The J-7 Modification 2 is almost identical to its Soviet siblings, while the E version boasts a unique wing. But how about a double MiG? Surprisingly, that's the kind of task the Chinese aviation engineers once received. And here's what they made. The aircraft's power plant is two turbojet engines with afterburners. Self-sealing fuel tanks are found in the wing and the fuselage, while the nose cone hides a radar system. Fixed armament consists of a 23mm autocannon with an ammo pool of 200 rounds. The aircraft can also carry conventional bombs and rockets, as well as infrared and radar-guided air-to-air missiles. The key part of this machine is its power plant. Two engines provide a high thrust-to-weight ratio, which in turn means excellent dynamics and climb rates. And no one ever thought the regular MiG-21 had a shortage of it in the first place. The increase in power didn't affect the maximum speed, however. It's limited by the wing's capabilities, much like on its predecessors. We definitely wouldn't recommend accelerating past 1,360 kilometers per hour near the ground unless you want to turn into a starfighter. Now, one might assume that adding another engine would make the aircraft big, heavy, or clumsy, like some Phantom, but it actually didn't. The increased size had little effect on maneuverability. The J-8 does a great job at turning towards the enemy, and you don't really need much more from a top fighter. It has two types of missiles against enemy air, the IR-homing PL-5B for close range and the radar-guided Uspida for long distances. Both do their jobs just as well as their counterparts from other nations. Now, the fixed armament of the J-8 leaves much to be desired. Its ammo pool can only last 3.5 seconds of continuous use, and with a low fire density, it's far from the best choice for gun duels. As for countermeasures, it's a mixed bag for this fighter. I mean, it does have some, which is already a matter of envy for some competitors. The Mirage, the Draken, the Starfighter, the Nesher, and the F1 fighters can only have flares in front of their noses. But there are only 64 of them, and even despite their increased caliber, they might not last the entire battle. Close air support isn't the strongest role for this Chinese fighter. You can destroy tanks with its rockets and 500-pound bombs, but it's a tricky task without a ballistic computer. What the J-8 does great is clearing the skies of enemy aircraft, providing a major contribution towards victory and ensuring the safety of Allied vehicles. The Ferdinand self-propelled guns occupy a special place in the history of German armored vehicles. There are so many myths about their creation and battle engagement that these machines are no doubt legendary. They also had just as legendary a predecessor, the Porsche Tiger. By the way, many made-up stories and misconceptions accumulated around the wartime activities of the Porsche company. You can often hear that the SPG was actually the idea of Ferdinand Porsche himself. They'd say Porsche was making his Tiger for a competition but lost to Henschel and decided to use the hulls for the SPGs. In fact, Porsche was only a design bureau back in those years, nothing else. Both Tigers were made according to official contracts, with Steyr factories assembling both Porsche Tiger and Ferdinand machines. No independent action was allowed in producing vehicles, of course. Due to urgency, the Germans put the Tigers into production with no preliminary testing, right off the blueprints. No wonder the first tanks had heaps of issues and assembly plans were shattered. The Porsche Tiger was the most notable issue producer. It had a new unique suspension, new air-cooled engines, and an electric transmission. Unlike other German tanks, it had rear-leading wheels, while pneumatic brakes were in the front. No one had any idea about their real-world performance. And soon, the number of issues became so overwhelming they had to stop the assembly lines for Porsche Tigers. What could they do next? They could try to polish both Tigers, but didn't they have enough issues with just one? On the other hand, discarding an entire project would be a shame with so much time and effort spent. So the Germans found a compromise. The Henschel Tiger would be mass-produced, while the Porsche Tiger designs would be used to create a self-propelled gun. It was still a complicated task that required new solutions, but Porsche engineers weren't new to bold experiments. The first thing they had to solve was the layout. The new, more powerful cannon had such a long barrel that they couldn't simply replace the turret with a casemate. The German army already had SPGs with a casemate in the rear and engines right below it. It made repairs difficult even with open-top compartment vehicles, so they had to find another solution for the Ferdinand. So the engines and the generators were placed in the center. Now only the casemate had to be removed to access the electric drives. The suspension units were outside so they could be replaced in the field, while the road wheels didn't overlap. The engineers were worried about their brainchild. They didn't have enough time to polish the Porsche Tiger, and yet they had more issues to work on. Could a 65-ton SPG be reliable? How do you tow and repair it? How would the electric transmission perform in battle? The Ferdinand's first actual combat went off the plan. Originally, they had to follow the infantry and lighter vehicles, providing covering fire. But during the Battle of Kursk, the Ferdinands found themselves in the front, and in a minefield. No wonder so many of them became immobilized. Moreover, the summer of 1943 was hot and dry, leading to dust clogs and overheating in the engines. Still, this machine was theoretically the best in the world in terms of armor and firepower at the time. By winter, they'd gained enough experience in employing the Ferdinands, so in December of 1943, the remaining machines were sent to Austria for a major overhaul. The SPGs received commander's cupolas, machine guns for the radio operator, and a new toolbox in the rear. A month before the overhaul, the Ferdinands were renamed into Elefants, which led many to mistakenly believe that the Elefants were improved Ferdinands. In fact, both names were used in parallel. After the overhaul, the Elefants were sent to Italy, where they demonstrated notable performance. They say there was a battle where 2 elephants fought around 50 American tanks for 10 hours and damaged roughly 30 of them. It's hard to say how much truth there is to it, but there's no doubt that they might well have pulled it off with their armor and firepower. Later, some of the elephants were brought back to the Eastern Front, where they remained until the end of the war. The Porsche engineers took a great technical risk developing their Tiger, and it certainly paid off. The Ferdinands, based on that Tiger, sustained 2 years of heavy battles and earned their fame as fearsome machines. Not long ago, pilots of some top aircraft received an updated suspended armament selection menu. We know how much you wanted this feature, and honestly speaking, we're a bit tired of manually composing dozens of weapon loadouts ourselves. So let's talk about these new opportunities. We'll start with the list of aircraft that enjoy this new system. Currently, 8 machines of different nations have it available: a couple of American A-10s, the German MiG-23 MLA, and the Su-22 UM-3K, today's Metal Beast, the Chinese J-8, the top Italian Starfighter and French Mirage planes, and the Israeli Kfir C-2. But very soon, with the Danger Zone update, more top planes will receive the custom loadouts, as well as all Phantom and MiG-21, 23, and 27 planes, which will increase the total past 30 machines, and more are coming. To create your first loadout, select a plane, go to Suspended Armament, and press Create in the bottom left. You'll see a line of squares representing your plane's hardpoints. If you click on a square, you'll see a list of weapons you can load onto this hardpoint. Aircraft upgrades and unlockable modules will add to the list of available weaponry, as expected. It makes sense to consider possible activities and battle conditions when creating a loadout. You're unlikely to need bombs and air-to-surface missiles in air combat, so why take them? The opposite is also true. No use taking a full set of AA missiles from mixed battles. You can only create a custom loadout in your hangar, not in battle, so think through future scenarios in advance. For instance, we don't recommend simply going for the top weapons on attack aircraft. Having a few different sets is better. There's more than one reason for that. First, each bomb and missile increases your respawn cost. It would be a shame to not be able to take off at all because you're only missing a few points. You wish you could drop a few bombs, right? Second, each weapon has its own mass that affects the flight performance of the carrier in a major way. There's no sense in carrying a bunch of heavy bombs if you expect to suppress enemy AA defense with guided missiles. You'll have way better chances with no flight performance penalty. On some machines, it's possible to lay out the same weapon set in different ways. Pay attention to the type of your ordnance in that case. For instance, large caliber bombs can be dropped with equal precision from both the wing and the belly hardpoints, while rockets are more convenient when they're closer to the center of your plane. Bear in mind that payload capacity is limited. You won't be able to take enough bombs to prevent takeoff. As for different wing loads, it's a bit trickier. If you fill out all the hard points on one side and leave the other empty, the game will warn you about it and won't allow you to save this loadout. However, it doesn't mean all your loadouts have to be symmetrical. You can have an uneven spread of the weight, but only within reasonable limits, individual for each plane. Well, that's it for the loadouts. Get creative, give them unique names for quick navigation, and favorite them to find them faster. Share your experience in the comments. Meanwhile, we'll be answering some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Dio Helang Ramadan. Why can't I launch TV-guided rockets or bombs at night? Hi, Dio. There's no mistake here. Such munitions can't be used when it's dark. The reason behind that is that their homing devices seek out points or groups of objects on the ground with a high contrast and use them as guidance, and they simply can't do that at night. Tithanos asks, does the nuke get unlocked at 6.7 or 7.0? Hi there. Currently, the nuclear bomber becomes available at a BR of 6.7. It's either the B-29 or the Tu-4. Another question comes from Pahor95. How do I use suspension on a Japanese MBT? Hi, Pahor. All the settings you need can be found in Controls, Ground Vehicles, Suspension Control. As for tactics, you might need the suspension in closed positions, such as to improve your depression angles or decrease the visibility of your tank's outline. 439 Sparky1 writes, do you pick comments to read for the next episode throughout the entire week? Hi, Sparky. As a rule of thumb, we collect comments from multiple aired episodes. So if your question isn't there in the next episode, chances are we haven't gotten to it yet. And the last comment for today was written by Blaue Staffel. You should also have rated the turning circle for the wheeled tanks. Hey there. It isn't important enough to have a full stage dedicated to it, so we didn't show it in the triathlon. But we can have it right here if you want. Let's line up the participants, and go. The best result is shown by the German machine. Then we have the Centauro, then the Chinese, American, and Japanese vehicles showing similar results. And the biggest circle belongs to the Ruikat. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to leave a like. Remember to give your smart missiles a pep talk before you launch them for that extra speed. Share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.
After World War II, the UK introduced the first ever main battle tank, the legendary Centurion. British engineers managed to combine the best qualities of several classes of tanks: sturdy armor, decent mobility, and good firepower, all in one neat package. Thanks to its outstanding performance, the Centurion remained in service all around the globe till the very end of the century. In War Thunder, there are several Centurion variants that can be found in the British, the Swedish, and the Israeli tech trees. But what's their designated combat role? As envisioned by the British engineers that designed them, Centurions are highly versatile tanks that remain effective in any combat conditions. Tanks of the series have better armor than other first-generation Western MBTs, but aren't as well protected as the Soviet ones. Most Centurions have a max speed of 35 kilometers per hour, which means that their counterparts are usually faster. But British vehicles make up for that with good acceleration and their ability not to bleed speed on any terrain. If you're fighting on a small or medium-sized map, a Centurion will always be among the first tanks to reach key areas of the map, or at least will get there right after the Vanguard. Another key feature of this tank family is that these tanks are equipped with powerful, quick-firing cannons. British engineers made sure that these guns were as convenient to use as possible. They have decent elevation and come with sub-caliber rounds with excellent ballistics. Furthermore, all Centurions except for the Mark I are equipped with a two-plane stabilizer. They're an excellent pick if you're into careful, deliberate gameplay. Just find yourself a position that allows you to cover several key areas, like positions that are next to B on Finland. The first vehicle of the series, the Mark I, is available only to the Brits. This tank combines the key strengths of its Soviet, German, and American counterparts. Its upper glacis plate can withstand hits coming from medium tanks. Its armament allows it to pierce the defenses of heavy tanks. Its mobility? Well, it's not perfect, but it's perfectly manageable. Mark I tanks also have access to APDS rounds, allowing British tankers to be among the first to master using this type of ammo. If you're new to this round, we suggest that you should aim at the target's center of mass, or, in the case of especially large vehicles, at the turret, close to the mantlet, to destroy the breach and to knock out the enemy gunner. Furthermore, thanks to its fast reload, the Mark I performs pretty well in a fight against several opponents. First disarm them, then deal the final blow. Finally, the last big selling point of the tank is the fact that it can launch smoke grenades, allowing you to create smoke screens that have a lot of tactical utility.
The Mark III is, unsurprisingly, also found in the British tech tree. It received a sturdier turret and a new 20-pounder with a 2-plane stabilizer. This tank is equally effective at long range and in CQC. Just keep in mind that its 6 times magnification sight for the gunner isn't always up to the task in long-range engagements. At